This Day in Sports History. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Roastery. When the morning's turning colder, there is no better way to start your day than with a cup of coffee brewed with fresh roasted beans from Sterling Roastery. With the same care and dedication they take with their soap, the Sterling folks roast their beans sourced from around the world with great care and expertise. Check out their full line of beans at sterlingsoap.com. And right now, you can win one of 3 $50 Sterling Roastery gift cards. Use it for yourself or as a gift to a friend. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways to enter today. That's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways for your chance to win a Sterling Roastery gift card. And welcome back to This Day in Sports History, the one and only daily sports history podcast dedicated to looking back at all the great, wild, weird, and amazing things that happened in sports on this day throughout the sports history timeline. And boy, do we have all of those in today's episode. It is November 19th, and we had more points than the scoreboard could handle in L.A., a not that surprising lack of points in Eugene, a $1 million goal and a millennium of goals to celebrate, and a non-sports fun fact at the end about Chicago that I'm guessing you probably did not know about. Stick around. This is going to be fun-filled, action-packed, and loaded with great stuff episode, guaranteed. Let's start with what happened on this day back in 2018 when folks tuned in for a Monday night football game and a track meet broke out instead. This was the 9-1 Kansas City Chiefs against the 9-1 Los Angeles Rams. A young Patrick Mahomes in his second year in the league, but his first as the starter, against Jared Goff in his third year in the NFL. Now, these were the 2 highest scoring offenses in the league, and this game played out like that. This game was originally slated to be played in Mexico, though, but the field in that venue was deemed unplayable after hosting a Shakira concert, and a soccer match left it in tatters. So the game got moved to LA just 6 days prior. And while the LA Coliseum was in good shape, outside of those walls was a bit of a different story. The Woolsey Forest Fire was raging in the LA County and Ventura County hills. It had forced Rams administrative staff to evacuate their offices, and the players who'd been preparing for the game at altitude in Colorado for the game in Mexico City stayed in Colorado in the days leading up to this game. While smoke wafted around the stadium, there was a whirlwind whipping up inside of it. The Rams led 13-7 at the end of the first quarter, not really an indication of what was on the way, really. And by the end of the first half, it was tied at 23. After a Greg Zuerlein field goal gave the Rams a 3-point lead, the fireworks really started to go off.
As he tries to work his way in and does his second touchdown of the night. Wow!
So, yeah, Rams linebacker Samuel Ebukam had an 11-yard scoop and score in the second quarter. And with that pick six, Ebukam became the 13th player in NFL history to have a fumble recovery for a touchdown and an interception return for a touchdown in the same game. Now, it has been done once since, and that happened earlier this season by Minnesota's Isaiah Rodgers. Ebukam's second of the night gave LA the 40-30 lead at the end of the third quarter, setting the stage for an explosive fourth quarter. Mahomes was slinging it.
Mahomes winds it up right open his hill. How quick was that? 73 yards.
And then the Chiefs' defense got in on the scoring action as well on the next Rams possession.
3rd and 11. Wow. The Chiefs take the lead. Can you believe this?
In less than a minute of game time, the Chiefs had turned a 10-point deficit into a 4-point lead. The Rams came back, though, and scored a touchdown on their next possession to regain the lead. Mahomes connected with Chris Conley for his 6th touchdown pass of the night to put the Chiefs back on top with 2:48 left. plenty of time for Goff to work down the field and find the score. After the 2-minute warning, the Rams struck again.
Goff on first down. Everett in stride. Wow! Touchdown Rams!
That was Gerald Everett's second TD catch of the quarter and Goff's fourth TD throw of the night. The Chiefs had time, but the Rams defense put the clamps on. Pressure on Mahomes, a deflected ball, and LA had its fifth takeaway for the evening. Final score, Rams 54, Chiefs 51. The teams combined for 1,001 total yards and the most points in a Monday night game. It is the third highest combined total in NFL history, and KC's 51 points is still the most in a losing effort in league history. All right, who is ready to let the air out of the balloon? I mean, come on, we can't keep that pace up all day. So let's turn the focus to what happened on this day back in 1983 when Oregon and Oregon State played one of the worst college football games in history. And it is remembered by many as the Toilet Bowl. Typically, when the Ducks and Beavers get together on the football field, well, they call this one the Civil War. But with Oregon State sporting just 3 wins so far on the year and the Ducks not much better with 4 wins, this season finale had all the markings of a dismal game. And as if it could not get any more dismal, a huge storm blew through the Oregon coast on this day as well. The game was played in a monsoon with a temperature in the upper 40s throughout. Water cascaded down from the stadium roof in sheets, causing several inches of water to puddle on the field throughout the day. So, bad teams, horrible weather, a recipe for disaster. This would be the place where I would probably make some kind of joke about, beavers and ducks both being perfectly adapted to play in the rain and the wet and conditions and all that kind of stuff. But, there's just no point. Oregon State had chances in the first half, but 2 lost fumbles deep in Ducks territory and 2 missed field goals left them scoreless in the half. Oregon completed only 1 pass in the first 30 minutes, and they did not make it past midfield. The script flipped in the second half with the Ducks losing fumbles and missing field goals, and in the waning minutes, they must have queued up yakety sacks and played it over the PA. Oregon State threw 2 interceptions. The Ducks gave the ball right back, though, with a fumble and an interception of their own. The teams combined for 11 turnovers on the day. The most exciting play may have been the final one. Oregon had the ball on their own 18 with a second left, and they ran the old hook and lateral play, but the receiver was pushed out of bounds at midfield, and the game ended in a 0-0 tie. And that is the last time a Division I college football game has ended in a scoreless tie. And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink.
Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points.
No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there.
But Coach, we have another half to play.
I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that?
Yes, Coach.
Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com.
On this day in 1978, it was the original Miracle at the Meadowlands. And for Giants fans, I apologize. This is such a horrific ending for you guys to watch. I can imagine that you just turn away in disgust if it ever appears on television or if somebody happens to be talking about it on a podcast. Anyway, what happened in this game is important, though, and it led to a change in how the end of a game usually plays out now. So this is the Philadelphia Eagles at the Meadowlands to play the New York Giants. Coming into this one, the Eagles still harbored hopes of a wild card playoff spot. The Giants were 5-6, they had lost 3 straight, and they were not making any postseason plans. But New York jumped out to the lead and held a 17-6 advantage as they went to the fourth quarter. The Eagles scored a touchdown to narrow the margin to 17-14. Now, you have seen the final play in this game, but I think it is important to go back a few plays to kind of widen the perspective and try to understand why the Giants did what they did. So, under 2 minutes to play, the Eagles had the football at the Giants' 19-yard line. Eagle quarterback Ron Jaworski dropped back to pass. His throw to fullback Mike Hogan was a little high and it grazed off Hogan's fingertips. Giant defensive back Otis McKinney was in the right spot at the right time, and he picked it off, ending the threat. Now, all the Giants had to do was run out the clock, and they would win the game. The Giants took over with 1 minute, 23 seconds left. On first down, quarterback Joe Pisarcik didn't take a knee but kind of fell to the ground. Eagles linebacker Frank LeMaster busted through the line, bowled over a blocker and kind of grazed Pisarcik's head as he flew by, and a little shoving match ensued between LeMaster and some of the Giants. Now, I only bring up this particular detail to suggest that maybe this is what led to what happened 2 plays later. The Eagles took their final timeout. On second down, Pisarcik did not take a knee. Instead, he spun and handed it off to fullback Larry Zonka, who picked up about 9 yards. Eagles with no way to stop the clock, the Giants just have to run one more play and the clock runs out. Everybody in the stadium figured the game to be over. CBS was rolling the closing credits and promoting the World's Strongest Man competition coming up after the conclusion of the game. On third down, the Giants had the same play call. Pisarcik was to spin, hand the ball to Zonka, and that would be that. Instead, this happened. And here's Don Criqui with the call that day for CBS.
As the clock winds out on the Philadelphia Eagles, a game they thought would project them into a possible wild card position. It would bring them 7-5 had they won, but a late interception by the Giants will preserve a Giant victory. An upset win as the Giants lead 17-12 and we're inside 30 seconds. The Eagles have no timeouts. Wait a minute. Here's a free fly. I don't believe it. The Eagles pick it up and Herm Edwards runs it in for a touchdown.
Herm Edwards' scoop and score not only gave the Eagles the unbelievable victory, but it was the catalyst to several actions. First, it put the Eagles firmly in the playoff picture. They went 2-2 the rest of the way, which included a win against the Giants in the final week of the regular season. Second, the Giants fired their offensive coordinator Bob Gibson the following day, and then fired head coach John McVay at the end of the season. Giants owner Wellington Mara said change was going to happen, but not as quickly if the Giants had won this game. Several New York players on the field for this game who stuck around into the 80s said that the coach for the 79 season, Ray Perkins, changed the attitude of the team, and that eventually led to Bill Parcells coming in and leading the Giants to 2 Super Bowl titles in the 80s. Joe Pisarcik was released by the Giants and he wound up in Philly. He was part of the team that went to Super Bowl 15 against the Raiders. And lastly, it led to teams developing what is now called the victory formation. And like I mentioned, Pisarcik kind of collapsed or fell to the ground on that first down play. It left him exposed to an overzealous defensive lineman or a linebacker. So teams innovated and they came up with the tight alignment kneel down play to run out the clock at the end of the game. It was called the $1 Million Goal. On this day in 1989, Paul Caligiuri scored what may be the most important goal ever scored in U.S. soccer history. The U.S. men's team was blowing it. A monumental opportunity lay before them in this game, and while this was a young team of college kids, the fact that Mexico had been banished from the 1990 World Cup left a void many expected them to fill. But a 0-0 tie in their previous game with El Salvador put them in a must-win game in their final World Cup qualifier against Trinidad-Tobago. This match was played in Port of Spain, Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago just needed a tie to advance to realize their World Cup dreams. And speaking of dreams, Caligiuri had a premonition in the days leading up to this game. He roomed with U.S. goalkeeper Tony Meola during training and travel, and he said to Tony one day, "I am seeing the headline after this game. USA wins 1-0. Meola gets the shutout, and Caligiuri scores the goal." Now, Caligiuri was not typically in the starting 11, but he was on this day. His primary role was to play central midfield and to mark and disrupt Trinidad's best setup man. The game was scoreless for the first 29 minutes. In the 30th, this happened. Here's John Paul Della Camera with the call for ESPN that day.
Ramos putting it in to Caligiuri. Beats the first man. A left-footed shot. Paul Caligiuri has scored a goal and the USA lead 1-0.
Caligiuri's left-footed shot off his laces dipped perfectly into the right side of the net to give the U.S. the 1-0 lead. The game progressed into the second half with the sun casting long shadows and glaring into the eyes of Meola in goal. Trinidad applied pressure, but they just couldn't find the equalizer. When the whistle blew for full time, the U.S. had qualified for the 1990 World Cup, their first appearance in 40 years. But there were other residuals from this game. The U.S. had been awarded to host the 1994 World Cup, but there were concerns about how it was going to be received, especially if the host nation had not played in one for more than 4 decades. The U.S. win on this day settled a lot of nerves in FIFA, and as it turned out, World Cup 94 was a huge financial success with record crowds. Also, because of the World Cup qualification in 90, thanks to Caligiuri's goal and the success of 94, it eventually led to the establishment of Major League Soccer in 1996. And it's kind of hard to imagine it coming together as quickly, if not for the goal that Paul Caligiuri scored on this day in 1989. There is not a more important person to soccer globally than Pelé. Well, on this day in 1969, Pelé scored career goal number 1,000. This was a game at one of the palaces built for soccer, Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro. Pelé's Santos team was playing Vasco da Gama. Pelé had scored number 999 2 games earlier. In the following game, Santos played on the road, and Pelé had a few chances in that game, but one shot hit the crossbar and another was saved off the line by a defender. That resulted in boos from the home team crowd at their own player for denying them the chance to see this historic 1,000th goal. The Vasco da Gama team was also not in the mood to be the team that allowed history to be made. A cross into the box intended for Pelé was intentionally headed into the goal by a Vasco da Gama player for an own goal, rather than let Pelé score his 1,000th. With time winding down in the match, Pelé broke away with the ball at his feet. Before he could rip a shot, though, he was brought down in the box, giving him a penalty kick. As cool as he had always seemed to be, he slotted a low ball into the right side of the net. The crowd stormed the pitch. He was hoisted onto the shoulders of the Santos fans, and they carried him off the field. And on this day in 1995, the Baltimore Stallions became the first and still only U.S.-based team to win the Canadian Football League's Grey Cup. The Canadian Football League made a brief foray south of the border, starting in 1993 with a team in Sacramento. The Baltimore Stallions came along in the 1994 season along with 2 other teams. For a team that would only spend 2 seasons in existence, they had great success. In their inaugural season, they made it all the way to the Grey Cup, which for the uninitiated, the Grey Cup is the CFL version of the Super Bowl. They came up 3 points short in the 94 edition, though. Well, after a stellar 15-3 regular season that included a 10-game winning streak, the Stallions found their way back to the Grey Cup in 95 against the Calgary Stampeders. Baltimore returned 2 punts for touchdowns, had a defensive scoop and score, 5 field goals, and quarterback Tracy Ham threw for 213 yards and scored a rushing TD to beat Doug Flutie and the Stampeders 37-20. So, like I said, this was the first and only time that an American team had won the Grey Cup, and that is largely due to what happened in the week before the Grey Cup in 95. If you remember the story from the 6th, when Browns owner Art Modell announced he was moving his team to Baltimore beginning play in 1996, Well, Stallions owner Jim Spiros knew he was not going to be able to compete with the NFL in his own backyard, so he folded the team in Baltimore after the Grey Cup win and moved to Montreal to become the Montreal Alouettes. The rest of the American-based CFL teams also folded, and that was the end of the short 3-year experiment of the CFL in the U.S. Time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. You've undoubtedly heard Chicago referred to as the Windy City, right? But did you know that it got that nickname for something other than the weather? Yep, and there's actually 2 theories as to how it caught on. First, there is the theory that newspapermen covering the political beat back in the 19th century referred to the politicians in the town as windbags. And with so many of their jaws flapping, it sure was windy in Chicago today. However, the Chicago Historical Society's Encyclopedia of Chicago says that jealous urban neighbors from other towns who felt boastful Chicago's residents' promotion of their city represented their windiness and being full of hot air. Hence, Chicago became the Windy City. That's all for today. Be sure to come on back tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.